Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Amanda Knox slams Matt Damon's movie Stillwater for profiting off her life story. Now asking, does her own name belong to her? The film's director previously saying her wrongful conviction did influence him.
It served as an initial inspiration point, but not much beyond that.
The search is on for suspects accused of shooting 10 people in New York City, then fleeing on mopeds. 7 innocent bystanders wounded by gunfire, police say was meant for gang members.
This is unacceptable on our streets of New York City, and it has to stop.
Shots fired, officer down.
Trial begins for a Tennessee accused cop killer taken into custody wearing the sergeant's own handcuffs. A shocking admission by the defense.
There's no question that Mr. Wiggins did.
Law and Crime. On to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer. Co-host Terry Austin is off for the week. Amanda Knox is calling out the new movie Stillwater starring Matt Damon, claiming the film is trying to exploit her life.
I loved her.
I know you did.
But everybody thinks that I killed her.
In Stillwater, father Matt Damon travels to France to visit his daughter in prison for the murder of her girlfriend, a murder she claims she did not commit. The movie's likeness to Amanda Knox's own story now has Knox asking, does my name belong to me? My face. What about my life story? My story. What does my name refer to events I had no hand in? I return to these questions because others continue to profit off my name, face, and story without my consent. Knox spent nearly 4 years in an Italian prison for the murder of her roommate, Meredith Kircher, in 2007. She was exonerated on appeal in 2015. Rudy Gaudet was convicted in a separate trial.
The prosecution was never able to prove that I participated in this case. What they were able to do was raise enough smoke to suggest to people that there must be fire.
We spoke to Knox last year about the impact of coerced confessions.
It all derived from trying to force me into a sexual assault murder equation that I certainly did not fit into.
Knox is now claiming she's continued to be accused of knowing something I'm not revealing and having been involved somehow, even if I didn't plunge the knife. Stillwater's director was asked last month if the movie is at all related to Amanda Knox.
You know, I was pretty fascinated with the Amanda Knox case back a long time ago and did a pretty deep dive into it and tracking it and just keeping up to speed. But, you know, it was really just served as inspiration at that point.
In a lengthy post on Twitter and Medium, Knox reveals that in the movie, the character asked the killer to help get rid of her roommate. Knox says by fictionalizing away my innocence, my total lack of involvement, by erasing the role of the authorities in my wrongful conviction, McCarthy reinforces an image of me as a guilty and untrustworthy person.
My prosecutors downplayed the actions of the actual killer, Rudy Gaudet, and they forced me into the equation by bringing up random, unverified, slanderous details that ultimately were irrelevant to the case or were simply not true.
Joining us today is public defender Anna Carlson and civil rights attorney Katie Smith. Anna, you represented clients who have found their way into a few headlines. Could this be about how media portrays cases in general?
I think Amanda Knox is stretching if she thinks this is a documentary of her case. I think everybody understands that Law and Order and shows like that have a right to do a ripped from the headline story. And she's pointed out there are a number of differences in this story. But I think she's making excellent points from a very informed perspective that having widespread media coverage of your own case can affect whether you get a fair trial. It's part of why we ask every jury when we pick them, what have you already been exposed to? What have you seen about this case in the media? Because, you know, just like you heard her say in the interview, there's already a narrative operating and juries are already very conscious of that. So I think part of what she's doing here is maybe asking for fairer trials and fairer portrayals going forward.
Absolutely. Now, Katie, everything points to Knox being at least the catalyst for this movie. Does she have any form of legal recourse for this film?
You know, as Anna said, I don't believe it rises to that level of using someone's name or likeness in such a direct way. And I originally thought of Law and Order too. They commonly get inspiration from things that are in the headlines, but it's not a direct rip. And this also brought up one thing to me, which is also the son of Sam laws. If there are convictions, son of Sam laws, which there are in most different states, prevent those who are convicted from profiting directly to their crimes. So this implicates lots of broader questions about really what can be spoken about and who can derive profit from it.
Absolutely. We'll obviously keep eyes on this and see what Amanda Knox's social media is saying as this movie continues to get views. Thank you both. Now to a major update in Wisconsin, where a man is charged with murdering and dismembering his father. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with the latest on the Halderson investigation.
And deputies in Dane County, Wisconsin, had hoped to find Krista Halderson alive, but sadly, they've announced that part of the human remains that they found have now been identified as hers. Now, you may recall Chandler Halderson, who is Krista Halderson's son. He was charged with murder and kidnapping, and he was also charged with dismembering his father, Bart. Now, Dane County officials say they'll ask the district attorney to file additional charges against Chandler for the murder of his mother. Chandler Halderson reported his parents missing last month, but deputies were suspicious of what he told them. The sheriff told us that a photo put Chandler Halderson in the area where part of his dad's remains were found. Chandler Halderson is right now being held in the Dane County Jail in the Madison, Wisconsin area. He is expected back in court early next month. Brian.
Thanks, Anjanette. Turning now to more top legal news, Robert Kraft has scored another legal victory as a judge is ordering video of the New England Patriots owner in a massage parlor be destroyed. Kraft faced charges after hidden police surveillance cameras at a massage parlor allegedly caught men paying for prostitution. But both a trial judge and appeals judge ruled the sting operation violated legitimate patrons' rights to privacy. The video was suppressed and charges against Kraft were dropped. Now, a judge is again siding with Kraft's defense, ordering the court return the video to prosecutors for destruction. The video was never made public. Marilyn Manson is asking a judge to dismiss a sexual assault lawsuit filed by a Game of Thrones actress, Esme Bianco. The musician is now accusing Bianco and another unnamed woman of spending months plotting, workshopping, and fine-tuning consensual friendships and relationships into twisted tales. Bianco filed the suit earlier this year, accusing Manson of attempting to force her to perform sexual acts, including tying her to a prayer kneeler, beating her with a whip apparently used by Nazis, and electrocuting her. Manson is also accused of sexual assault by actor and activist Evan Rachel Wood. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, when Rodney Reed will learn his fate after his hearing requesting a new trial wraps up. But first, a shooting that injured bystanders caught in the crossfire. How police say the alleged suspects got away after the break. Welcome back. 10 people were shot over the weekend in Corona, Queens, New York. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with a video of the shooting and alleged accomplices.
Brian, the NYPD is calling this a targeted gang-related attack, but unfortunately 7 innocent bystanders were wounded, and police are hoping that someone will recognize the 4 men involved.
Saturday night, around 10 p.m., 2 masked men with guns walk toward a barber shop and start shooting.
There was a party going on at a restaurant just a few stores away. 10 people were shot, 3 of which are known Trinitario gang members. We believe there are 7 unintended targets.
NYPD Chief of Detectives James Essig says the innocent bystanders shot by these men ranged in age from 19 to 72. Men on mopeds picked up the shooters.
There's just one common theme I want to get out there that's a recurring theme that keeps happening, and it has to stop throughout the city. That's gang members, that's guns, multiple guns on the scene, scooters being used, masks, and lastly, unintended targets getting hit.
Police hope someone recognizes the men in the video.
Someone's going to see that video. They're going to see those still photos. They're going to say, oh, I know that clothing, or the video, I know their gait, I know so-and-so walks that way, and that's why we are really, really appealing to the public.
Thankfully, those 7 innocent bystanders who were shot are expected to survive. Anyone with information about the shooting is asked to call New York City's Crime Stoppers program. That's 1-800-577-TIPS. And Katie Smith is an attorney who is here with us now. Katie, watching that video and hearing that 7 innocent people were struck by gunfire, what can we do you think, or what can be done in New York City to stop this kind of violence? You heard the chief of detectives say they've had this issue in other parts of the city.
It's always a tough solution, and I think it's easier, at least for me, to approach it from what we shouldn't do rather than what we should do. And I know that the Republican candidate, Stillwater, suggested that we should bring back stop and frisk. And that is simply not the answer in times like this. And this is exactly when constitutional rights become slowly diminished, is when people are afraid. What I do think we really need to do is bolster faith in the community with the police, because that's what really lacks. On-the-ground connections is one way to take a step forward.
Yeah, when you have your community invested, it sure helps. And when they're willing to cooperate with law enforcement and pass along that information, of course. Thanks so much, Katie. Brian, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Anjanette. A 2-week hearing has ended for a Texas inmate who claims he's innocent of raping and murdering a young woman. Rodney Reed is on death row for the murder of Stacey Stites in 1996. Reed's execution was stayed in 2019 after he was granted a new hearing. His attorney says evidence points to other possible suspects, including Stites' then-fiancé. They also say Reed and Stites had a secret consensual relationship, and that's why his DNA was found on her body. But prosecutors and Stites' family says the jury got it right. The judge has an August 31st deadline to make a decision. The judge in Robert Durst's murder trial has denied a request for a mistrial after the millionaire claimed he was too sick to testify. Durst has repeatedly said he wants to testify in his own defense, but a doctor said the stress of that could kill him. Durst is accused of killing his friend Susan Berman to keep her quiet about what she knew about his wife's disappearance. The state will rest its case after LAPD detective Luis Romero finishes testifying. An interview of Durst following his arrest in 2015 will play when Romero's testimony resumes. Anna, this is a new one, I think, for both of us. Durst may not be around if there is an appeal, but let's just imagine he will be. But do you think a higher court would approve of the judge's ruling to continue the case?
I think this is a pretty problematic ruling. I think in this particular case, they have a lot of documentation of his illness. This isn't just based on an assertion by the defense team. They have a recent examination from a doctor at Cedars-Sinai. I think that this could potentially present a problem. I mean, in cases, we always have a problem if the defendant makes themselves absent from the case can go on without them there. And that's what the prosecution is alluding to, that this person has absented themselves from their own trial. But I think the defense has an excellent case that he's not able to participate through no fault of his own.
All right, we'll see how that argument goes if this does end up going on appeal. Thank you very much. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, trial begins for an accused cop killer. The horrendous details in the death of a Tennessee deputy and the shocking admission from the defense after the break. Welcome back. Opening statements in the Tennessee trial of a defendant accused of murdering a sheriff's deputy and setting fire to his body. On Monday, a judge denied a defense motion to delay the start of Stephen Wiggins' trial due to the pandemic. Wiggins is charged with first-degree murder, vehicular arson, and abuse of a corpse for the death of Dickinson County Sheriff's Deputy Sergeant Daniel Baker. If convicted, Wiggins could face the death penalty. Baker was killed back in May 2018. Prosecutors say Baker was responding to a report of a suspicious vehicle driven by the defendant.
The defendant removed a .45 caliber high-point semi-automatic pistol. As Sergeant Baker approached the passenger side window, which had been rolled down, the defendant leveled off and shot through the passenger side window. Sergeant Baker ran backwards from the car and issued his final words, a warning. Shots fired, officer down. Sergeant Baker collapsed on the ground, still alive. The defendant exits the vehicle out of the driver's side door, which he had previously said was broken. He approaches Sergeant Baker and at close range executes him. This is on video.
Prosecutors say the defendant then got into Baker's patrol vehicle, drove it next to Baker's body, loaded it into the vehicle, and drove away.
The defendant, pretending to be law enforcement, answers multiple radio calls from Dixon County Central Dispatch. He's thinking clearly and quickly, and he responds, 10-4, 1 in custody, en route. The defendant answered Sergeant Baker's cell phone, a call from Deputy Chris Lashley. And he tells Chris Lashley, pretending to be Sergeant Baker, 10-4, everything's okay. He exits the roadway and he drives through a couple of fields to a remote area that can't be seen from the road. He gets out of the vehicle. The defendant then sets fire to Sergeant Baker and also the front seat of the car. He closes the doors, locks the doors, and flees.
The defendant was arrested after 2 days following one of the largest manhunts in the state of Tennessee. Prosecutors say he was found in possession of the murder weapon and voluntarily gave a statement to investigators.
In that statement, he was asked, why did you walk up and shoot Sergeant Baker in the head close range? And the defendant said, it's like a dog. You don't let it suffer.
When we come back, the victim's widow takes the stand, the heartbreaking testimony about the loss of a husband, father. Back now to the trial of an accused cop killer, Stephen Wiggins. His defense attorney admitted his client is the real killer, but pleaded with the jury that it was not premeditated.
The proof in this case is going to make you angry. It's going to make you angry at Steve. And I know that because it made me angry. And it wasn't until I was able to learn more about Stephen, his life history and his life course, that I was even able to begin to fathom how something like this could happen. The defense does not intend to put forth witnesses in this portion of the case. Our intention is to cross-examine witnesses only to the extent necessary to complete a picture.
Prosecutors say the defendant also stole Baker's backup weapon, a pistol his wife bought him for Christmas.
The first year we were together, I got him a Glock 357.
Okay. So what did Daniel do with the Glock 357? Is that something?
It was to be used as a backup weapon.
Okay. And would you see him carry it on a daily basis as his backup weapon?
Yes, I would see him with it on several occasions. Sometimes it stayed in his police car, so I didn't see it every day, but I knew that he had it.
How did you know that he wanted a 357 as a backup weapon?
When there was something that Daniel wanted, then he made it known, and he would drop hints here and there to. I knew that's what he wanted. He even had it lined up at the sportsman's store. You know, if she comes in, this is the one I want. So.
Well, did you attempt to fool him that Christmas as to?
Yes, because I did that every year. But I would wrap something, and if it was small, I would wrap it in several sizes, boxes. And I even put bricks in this one to make it, to try to mask what it is.
Let's bring back civil rights attorney Katie Smith and public defender Honor Carlson. Katie, in the prosecution's opening, they said Wiggins referred to the victim as a dog, that he had to put him out of his misery. How much of an emotional impact do you think this is going to have on the jury during the openings?
Brian, I think it's a huge emotional impact. It really shows the way he was thinking about the victim at that time. And it's really not doing any favors to the defense. And I think immediately when you hear that, it feels so callous. And the jury is not supposed to, of course, consider certain emotional aspects to things. But the jury is human. And hearing that is very disturbing. And it certainly goes to this ultimate issue about whether or not he really intended the killing. And I think that is not a good fact for the defense.
Yeah, that dog statement definitely is going to come back to bite him, because that shows intent and some level of premeditation, I think. On it, the defense said they wouldn't cross certain witnesses and that they would not dishonor the victim's memory. Your thoughts on the defense's tactic here?
So, Brian, when I heard about this tactic, at first I thought that they were referring to not wanting to cross-examine police officers or other potential witnesses in the case, which I think in most cases would be a mistake. You almost never don't want to ask no questions. You want to maximize the impact of one well-timed question. Their defense here is regarding premeditation, regarding whether he had planned this. And so asking a police officer, well, you never met Stephen Wiggins before this incident, or you weren't present on that day, just that one single question can have impact. But after watching the testimony from what they call the spark of life witness, that's the widow, Lisa Baker, I think he's referring to reassuring the jury he's not going to cross-examine the grieving widow. And there really is nothing that he could accomplish by doing that.
Yeah, I think it made a lot of sense. I think to some degree, when you don't have the facts on your side, as many defense attorneys often have in cases, trying to find a middle ground with the jury and say, hey, I'm not going to overstep my bounds, but I'm going to do my job here. I think that was a very smart move. Thank you, Anna and Katie. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily.